Hey everybody, welcome back to 10 Minute Marvel. I'm Petter, and today we're talking about one of the rumors that we talked about on this week's 10 Minute Marvel podcast. And that's that Marvel has 5 new shows in development. Now, before I kind of get into the speculation of what could those shows be, let's talk a little bit about what this means. So, the history that we kind of want to go back on here is that Marvel originally treated their streaming TV shows like a movie that they cut into multiple pieces. Not all of them. Some of them had and were helmed a little bit more by folks familiar with television. WandaVision and Loki being two great examples of that. But there's a fair number of the other ones that feel a little bit like, okay, this is being run as if it were a movie. Which in turn kind of gave us a mixed result on how good the actual product was. And a lot of this stemmed from the direction of Bob Chapek. Bob Chapek was like, we need a bunch of content for Disney Plus. A bunch of content came out. It wasn't that good. Bob Chapek got fired. Bob Iger comes back in. Bob Iger says, hey, we're going to slow down on this. We're going to put out higher quality products less often. And with that, I think that came with a change for how Marvel did television. Now Marvel is doing television more in the traditional format. Traditional format being you have a showrunner, probably the writer on the show, or at least the head writer on the show. They're the person who's kind of driving the whole story, and they're going to be the one who pitches the idea for the show, kind of lays out, like, this is how we can make this show work for 100 episodes, even if it doesn't get 100 episodes, like, this is how it could potentially run, and then even to the point of, here's a pilot. In television, it's like, okay, the director matters less. A lot of television shows might have 10 different directors in a 22 episode season. Why? Because you can. There's nothing that's really stopping you from doing anything like that. Because all the vision is put out by the showrunner. So, in regular television, you have all these people pitching their ideas to the different studios out there. And some of these ideas get to the point of like, okay, we're interested in that one. And eventually, let's shoot a pilot for it. At that point in time, it is at least in the early stages of production. You have your cast set, you've started filming something, even if it doesn't get beyond that first pilot episode. So when we talk about Marvel has at least 5 shows in development, that is before production. These are ideas that are being pitched to Marvel that they're interested in hearing more. They want to see kind of that show Bible that the showrunner has, that this full idea for what these shows are. So what I want to talk about today is what 5 shows Marvel might be looking at in development. Now, it's at least 5 shows, so I expect there are more, but the phrasing of at least 5 shows tells me you probably have 5 that are in that phase of we are getting together the show Bible. We are placing that piece together, getting ready to start thinking about, okay, who we might cast in some of these roles, or even the point of casting. Which kind of leads me to the first one. I think there's a couple of them that are fairly obvious. And right now I'm blanking on the second one, so it's not that obvious. But The first, okay, there we go, got it. The first one being the Vision show. Now, this is a give me. This is kind of a slam dunk of a show because we already know that they're doing casting for it. We know that James Spader is coming back, and then there's also another actor from Picard who has joined the cast as well, which makes sense because it has a showrunner, and the showrunner is the showrunner for Star Trek Picard. So, bringing some people he knows over with him for this show. And they've talked about this, how it is kind of the third piece of the trilogy of WandaVision to Agatha All Along, which is coming out here, to then this Vision show, which has been called Vision Quest. I think Marvel is referring to it again as Vision Quest. So, whatever that it might be. The other one that they've mentioned as well is Nova. A Richard Rider Nova show, space ensemble, a Star Trek BSG sort of show, which should tell you that it's probably going to be set a little bit more on the spaceship, at least a fair amount on the spaceship, because that is a set. It's a contained area that you can tell that story without having to spend a ton of money on special effects for a bunch of different planets. That one, I'm excited for that one, mainly because I want to see how they handle the destruction of Xandar. And Xandar's was destroyed by Thanos prior to the snap, so it was not something that was undone and like fixed in Hulk's snap. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that, how Richard Rider survives, and like what it does to him knowing that the rest of the Nova Corps is gone. I think there's some interesting stories and options to tell there, as well as still having kind of that episodic, maybe searching for other stragglers or others who were abandoned and left behind after the destruction of Thanos. Because he was doing plenty of destroying before he started setting his eyes on the Infinity Stones. That leaves 3 potential shows. And the first one I'm going to pitch that I think is in kind of production, or development, I should say, not production, development, is going to be a Young Avengers show. I think had the Marvels been a smash hit, which it may have been had the writers and actors strike not happened, and with the actor strike happening, they didn't have the ability to parade out Mon Vellani to have her do the whole press junket, because I think people would have fallen in love with her and more people would have gone to see that movie. Not because of Carol Danvers, not because of Monica Rambeau, but because of Kamala Khan. Because of that, though, I think it takes the Young Avengers that they were considering for a movie and pulls it back to television. And I actually think that works really well, because the Young Avengers can then become kind of a proving ground for young characters. They can test and see who's doing really well. Amon Vellani can be kind of this first leader of that team, and when they have a proper spot for her in the movies and a proper plan for her, they can graduate her up to that big league and have some of the other characters they've been developing fill that role. So it can be kind of a revolving cast of younger characters, younger heroes, seeing who sticks. You can have a little bit of that. I'm not going to say they're going to go CW with it. It's going to have a much bigger budget than the CW shows did. But I think you could have a little bit of that drama, a little bit of not only the heroes having to fight bad guys and deal with big threats and stuff like that they might not be equipped for when they're kids, but also then they have a chance to kind of develop how do these kids, these young Avengers, younger adults, how do they navigate this idea of teamwork? How do they navigate different personalities? I mean, if people are graduating up to the Avengers and bigger things, how do they handle kind of that conflict of everybody wants to be the next person to go up, but at the same time, part of that is you have to work together and you have to know how to handle each other. I think that could work really well in a show and give them a show that runs for quite a while. The next one I'm going to toss out here, I think, is a bit more of a stretch, but something like Midnight Suns. I say it's a bit more of a stretch because I think there are some characters that would be you'd want to see in Midnight Suns. You'd want to potentially see like a Blade. You'd want to see a Ghost Rider. Even a Moon Knight. These characters who, I mean, Blade, I think we can comfortably say is probably more of a movie character that they want to do at this point. And we can talk in another video potentially about the kind of Blade history and what has probably been driving the changes, which honestly is not going to be what you expect. But there's other supernatural kind of like characters. We were introduced to Jack Russell, and who is Werewolf by Night, Man-Thing, and Elsa Bloodstone. With the exception of Man-Thing, who obviously would need some CGI to make that character work, Jack Russell, he transforms into a werewolf from time to time, not a big deal. Elsa Bloodstone, just a person. And there's other characters like Nico Moreau, who's in the Midnight Suns. You could have Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, if you wanted to show up in that. And now you have some more human-based characters, which is why, I mean, Blade would be great for this. Though, like I said, I think they really want that movie to happen. And I don't think Mahershala Ali would stick around for a television show. But why not make it monster hunting? We've obviously seen successful monster hunting shows before with Supernatural. That went for so many seasons. So it's a formula that can work. It's that procedural type show, Monster of a Week type show that I think could work really well. Especially you could add in a little bit of a twist where, yeah, Midnight Suns are having to deal with monsters some episodes, but they're also having to deal with the monster hunters from Werewolf by Night, that special presentation, and deal with them. And finally, my third option, or fifth option really, I think Marvel already is working on whatever their first, and they're probably searching for it, but they probably have an idea that they like, that somebody's pitched them for their first mutant show. Why? Well, because if the mutants are coming, and the idea is we might get our first X-Men or mutant film after Secret Wars. Now that's still a few years out. That's 2027. But really, we're almost done with 2024. 25, 26, 27. That's 3 years out. And they'll probably want to do mutants first. At least a purely mutant thing on the big screen. Obviously, that's going to be a huge moneymaker whenever and however they do that. But who are some of the characters that they could say maybe pull from the X-Men? And I'm going to pitch kind of my general idea that I could see working. And it takes my two favorite X-Men characters, Rogue and Gambit, and I think split them off, create an X-Force, X-Factor, whatever you want to call this team that's maybe not quite as good. You do Gambit in there, you do Rogue, you have their romance, and then you sprinkle in a few other characters to maybe 3 other characters, especially ones that aren't CGI heavy on their effects, because you'll have a bit of CGI with Gambit, but even that's fairly limited. He's still just a person. His powers have kind of the CGI for it. So I think that would work really well, and it's kind of a side team. You have a couple big name characters, Rogue and Gambit, but also they're big name in a way that they can power and kind of lead a show. They can cross over into the movies, but they don't have to be in the movies all the time. They don't have to be a permanent fixture on the X-Men team. It's not like we're saying, take Wolverine, stick him off to the side here. Definitely not doing that, because I think there's a 0% chance that that would happen for Marvel. So let me know your thoughts on this. I was going to say, are you interested in any of these shows? What are your ideas for it? I had a slightly different question, then I was like, I don't like that one quite as well. But what stands out to you as like, okay, this could work well? What would you like to see? Are there any different things? The Break Room, New Rockstars channel, has a episode on this with a bunch of different ideas as well. But for me, these 5 ideas are kind of the ones that stand out to me, and some of them are ones that I've kind of thought through as well. Obviously, like, I have my idea for what I would do with the X-Men. I have my idea what I would do for Midnight Suns that came to me. I've been working on this episode or this video for a little while, and so it's interesting to think of, like, okay, what are some of the different options that might be out there? And if you want even more options, like I said, check out their video and leave a comment down below as to what you would want most for an option. And give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoy this content, like I said, thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. Click that notification bell to know when we put out new content. And you're going to get speculation, rumor videos like this, as well as different Marvel collectible videos, things, plenty of different things to check out here on this channel. I want to have a good variety. And yeah, check out the 10-Minute Marvel podcast as well. You can do that over here on YouTube. Click on the channel and then the podcast tab to catch up. Or if you get your podcast from somewhere else, you can find 10-Minute Marvel wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcasts from. But with that, we'll see you next time.